dough, it's very important to make sure that you haven't got too many folds or cracks. If you do have those, just tuck them underneath. Now that might look a little bit small for the mould. Believe you me, that's going to expand. They've risen to cover nearly all of the ring, but they need to be flattened, fill in the gaps, and also we don't want the buns to be too thick. Okay, now the oven. I've got this on at 225, but before the buns go in, I'm going to need to just create a bit of steam to get some of that dry heat out. Now these have had 7-8 minutes. Before popping back in the oven, I just want to glaze the buns. I'm just going to make a simple egg glaze. There's two reasons for glazing these. First one is appearance. Secondly, there's something else I'm going to add. Sesame seeds.
Stick them back in the oven for about 8 minutes.
Okay, so now I need to slice some hamburgers.
You'll need a really sharp knife to cut straight through the plastic.
You can see from there the structure of this cross-section of this meat. You can see the mince, the lines of mince all running this way. So by cutting it like that, they're running vertically. So when we bite into the burger, it's just going to fall apart and just feel so juicy.
I've got to have cheese in my burger. And the question was to get an element of good quality cheese, but also there's something about cheese slices. So how would we make our own processed cheese slices? We started by adding a salt called sodium citrate, one of the ingredients used in making processed cheese, to a mixture of cheese and wine.
Sodium citrate at 4%. Great texture, but...
It's a really good texture, but it's like bicarb, sodium bicarbonate.
Yeah.
You almost think your tongue's going to start fizzing in the middle of it.
As a comparison, we made another version replacing sodium citrate with cornstarch, which should act as a binding agent.
Doesn't have the same texture.
Doesn't hold as well. More mushy.
Grainy as well.
Grainy, yeah.
The third had the wine, but no binding agent.
Actually, I think it's going to be much more... I think it's going to be very rubbery. Is that the future?
Actually, it's all right. Texture's not great.
I think it'll have a hard time melting evenly, too.
None of them were right. We still had a lot more work to do.
After all the trial and error, I've eventually come up with what I think is a pretty spectacular recipe for our own cheese slice. Now you can choose what cheese you want, cheddar, parmesan, Emmental, Gruyere. We've gone for a Comté, which has got a nutty note to it. It's not too strong. Now, start off with this. It's a garlic and thyme, peppercorn infused sherry. And then to that, I'm going to add the key ingredient for this recipe. Without this, it just won't work. And this is sodium citrate, which is effectively the salt of citric acid. But one of its main purposes is actually for treatment of cystitis, which obviously I've never had. The only thing you need to make sure is that you don't get something that's flavoured with cranberry or orange. Plain, straight sodium citrate. Cheese, we need to start adding this in small quantities. Effectively, it's a bit like making mayonnaise. Don't add it all in one hit. And what the sodium citrate does is it helps emulsify the proteins and the fats. If we don't add this and just add the cheese on its own, what will happen is the proteins will want to unravel. They'll want to clump together, and that means they'll force out the fats. The whole mix is going to split, and you're left with this very dry, stringy mass. So now this is just about ready. Actually, it's pretty delicious if I say so myself. Final step I need to do is pour this onto I've got a tray here lined with parchment. And that's it. Just leave that to cool, and that will set up into one slice. And all we need to do is cut it into cheese slices.
So, we had the burger, bun and cheese sussed. Next, we started to look at the condiments. Now, I've had a long love affair with tomato ketchup, but we came up with this tomato concentrate, super meat-boosting concentrate, made with the part of the tomatoes that a lot of chefs historically throw away. It's the seeds and the pulp. But by not using shop-bought ketchup, was I making a terrible mistake?
But at the end of the day, this is your hamburger, and we're not invited.
There's also, yes, you are. You're here. Look, guys. There is a fine line as well about kind of de-burger the burger. Does it become too poncy and it's no longer a burger? Pulp and seeds.
There was no doubt about it. This tomato concentrate was the future. It was going on my burger.
You know, sometimes when something tastes that good, you kind of think, who gives a flying what's it?
Yeah.
Look. So, now to cook and build my burger. I've got a pan that's been on the heat for a good 20 minutes. It's really important to get this as hot as you can. Always put it down closest to you first and let it fall away. Do it the other way, you can splash yourself with hot fat. What I need to do is I'm going to flip this every 20 or 30 seconds. The reason for that is it's actually treating the pan almost like a rotisserie. What's happening when I'm flipping this burger is that the side against the pan obviously is getting hot, it's starting to get nice coloration on it. But before that heat can penetrate inside the meat too much, what I'm doing, I'm flipping it, so then that underside faces the air. It starts to cool down a little bit. That way what happens is you drive a much more even temperature through the meat. You'll have something that's nicely coloured on the outside, but evenly cooked through the middle. What I'm going to do now is just brush it with a little bit of burnt rosette. This is butter that's been heated enough to cook the caseins, proteins in it, and that turns this wonderful golden brown and develops this fantastic nutty flavour. Take this meat off and just let that rest. Now to the bun. I think it's really important to have a slightly toasted bun, but I also want some of those meat flavours, the flavours from the patty itself. Just fry these for 20-30 seconds. Next, with the cheese slices, I've taken that big sheet and just cut them into squares. Put one slice on each bun, and then these are going to go under the grill. Those should take a maximum of half a minute. Ready for the other ingredients. What I've got here is sliced pickled gherkins, tomatoes, some sliced lettuce and some onions, but I've just blanched the onions for 20 seconds, that's all. I just want to remove that aggressive rawness from them. Again, this is not such a personal thing, but the cheese to be melted but not coloured. So if you look at that, you can see this wonderful melted cheese covering each toasted bun. Now we're ready to actually build the hamburger.
Now for the condiments. Mustard, mayo, and of course that mouth-watering tomato concentrate.
If you want to know how to make this, it's on my website. Bit of ketchup, pickled gherkin, then the tomatoes. Okay, now the meat, and the onion and lettuce mixture, and then finally my top bun. That really is my perfect hamburger.
Britain faces a plague and the race is on to save the population as the new series of Spooks continues on BBC One. Here on BBC Two, improvisation is the first big test for the 9 would-be classical stars in a moment.